Is there any sign that Iran is prepared to allow passage of the Strait of Hormuz? Will the Strait of Hormuz remain closed so long as this war continues?
Well, as a matter of fact, the Strait of Hormuz is open. There are many tankers and ships who are passing through the Strait of Hormuz, and I can say that the strait is not closed, but it is only closed to American, Israeli, ships and tankers, and not to others.
Okay, so we have more updates on the whole oil shipping situation in the Persian Gulf this week, because after Iran clearly attempted to reclose the Strait of Hormuz just days ago, they are now coming out and doing a sudden reversal in rhetoric, trying to claim that they are not closing the Strait of Hormuz. They don't intend to mess with other countries here. And really their fight is just with America and Israel, and other countries are perfectly fine to move their oil through the strait, which of course contradicts the actions that we saw just days ago where they were bombing a bunch of oil tankers that did not belong to America or Israel. So it's certainly a curious about face, although as I noted from the day they started doing this, I believe that Iran is making a severe strategic blunder in the Persian Gulf. I know that there has been a lot of panic that, hey, tensions are re-rising, the war is not going anywhere anytime soon, because look what Iran is doing to the oil tankers now. They're closing down the strait. This is a global energy crisis. It's going to last a long time. And I pointed out, hey, wait a minute, guys. I think that Iran is actually making a dumb mistake here that they're going to very quickly regret, and it's not all that dissimilar to what we saw even earlier in the war when they attempted to bomb the other Gulf states, right? A bunch of Muslim nations like Saudi Arabia that were not previously involved. They realized that was a bad idea because it simply provoked those potential mediators of peace into war against them, who those countries likewise then decided to join America alongside in the war. And what happened just weeks later, the Iranian president came out and tried to apologize and say, oh, it was a mistake. We didn't mean to do that. And there's all this confusion, obviously, because nobody knows who is truly in charge of the Iranian government right now, which I think is also part of the point. And we've talked about that as well. Well, as it pertains to the Strait of Hormuz, I tried to point out that, well, although Iran may think they're smart by saying, hey, we can't win the war conventionally, so we're going to mess with your oil, and yes, Donald Trump, we're going to hurt you politically and all this, that really, there's a lot of ways this could end badly for Iran. Because first and foremost, if they're going to target not just our oil, but really the world's oil, then we can absolutely do the same exact thing. And days ago, we actually spoke about how Trump was now launching military strikes on Karg Island, where 80 to 90% of Iran's oil is prepared to be shipped out of there, right? So basically Trump was saying, hey, you want to mess with our oil? We can do that as well. It's kind of, in a sense, mutually assured destruction, although I guess you could say it's not even all that mutual. So you're playing with fire here, Iran, right? And then we even secondly pointed out in the context of China that I don't think that even Iran's top ally in the world stage right now is all that happy with it either, because guess what? China likewise gets a lot of their oil, coming from Iran especially, through the Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf. If Iran is making stupid, careless, reckless decisions that are actually hurting the bottom line of China, China's not going to back the move either. We predicted that, and then days later what happened? China issued a rare statement of condemnation against Iran for their activities against the Gulf states. So this was all to say what, right? Despite the hype, despite a lot of the panic and behavior that Iran's killing us, what are they doing? I stated, this was going to be a mistake on their behalf. And likewise, I think we're watching that happen right now. Perhaps it can explain, by the way, the very reason why now the Iranian government is trying to claim, likely under not just international pressure, but you'd have to imagine probably also Chinese pressure. Let's not forget that, right? They did something that actually pissed off their own ally here. Again, I repeat, Iran's leaders are not these rational geniuses. They're actually just very dumb and careless. Well, maybe that is the case that you're watching. Anyways, that said, I want to bring you this story here today. We'll show you what this Iranian Foreign Minister character recently said in an interview with MSNBC. Of course, it's been this running trend that liberal media keeps interviewing Iranian officials without offering any real pushback. But still, we'll break down, we'll actually push back on what he's stating here about the current situation. First, though, guys, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate the support, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date on all the latest news and coverage. And that said, following up from yesterday's story where we spoke about the U.S. military strikes announced by President Trump on Karg Island, we repeat, that is where Iran's oil shipping almost entirely takes place from, and that was basically the warning shot. Again, Iran, you're going to mess with global oil supply, we mess with your oil supply. Trump further followed up today to say the following, quote, "The United States of America has beaten and completely decimated Iran, both militarily, economically, and in every other way, but the countries of the world that receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage, and we will help a lot. The U.S. will also coordinate with those countries so that everything goes quickly, smoothly, and well. This should have always been a team effort, and now it will be. It will bring the world together toward harmony, security, and everlasting peace," from President Trump. That is, of course, not just him basically announcing a security guarantee, a U.S. military security guarantee that we're not going to let Iran mess with the global oil supply and oil prices. But likewise, and you know this has been a running theme of Trump if you ever watch the way he deals with NATO, that he doesn't like America to just be doing everyone else's job for them. Likewise, also is coordinating with, likely you'd have to imagine, the Gulf states, maybe even the NATO states, to say this has to be a mutual defense pact. We have to all use our navies and pull together our resources to make sure that Iran's, random acts of harassment are not allowed to stand there. So that's just another way in which, again, America is showing, look, we're not going to allow the Strait of Hormuz thing to happen. Much like every other time Iran's tried something, basically we have to respond by sending our military and then blowing it up and then shutting them up again. And that's, basically the same exact story there. So that said, so we understand that aspect of the story, right? America's announcing we're not going to mess with the stupid harassment of the oil prices. I want you to now take a listen to the response of the Iranian Foreign Minister today to the Karg Island strikes and recent, military retaliation coming from the Trump administration, because there's a lot of interesting little tidbits he threw in there that I'd like to break down.
Foreign Minister Arakshi, thank you so much for your time this morning, sir. I wanted to start with the news overnight that the U.S. has carried out a military strike on Karg Island. The President of the United States said that for reasons of decency, I have chosen not to wipe out all the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision. Let me start by asking you about what has happened on Karg Island and what is Iran's response to these strikes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think our armed forces have already answered that they would retaliate if our oil and energy infrastructure are attacked. And they will attack any energy infrastructure in the region which belongs to an American company or an American company is a shareholder. So the reaction would be clear. Last night, they have done it from the soil of our neighbors. And this is crystal clear that now they are using the territory of our neighbors to attack us by these kind of, rockets. And this is absolutely unacceptable.
Which neighbors, sir?
Well, these last night attacks were tracked by our forces, and now it is clear that they are fired from UAE, from two locations in the UAE, from in Ras Al Khaimah, and from a location very close to the city of Dubai. And it is very, dangerous that they use highly populated areas to launch, rockets against us.
Yeah, so what you basically heard there, to make a long story short, is the normal bluster from Iran. They're threatening to retaliate, to which I say, retaliate how exactly? I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to ramp up your next historic strike that largely doesn't hit anything? You're going to just use a suicide boat against an unarmed oil tanker? Does that make you so tough? Like, I'm not exactly sure, right? That's what they always say. Oh, they're going to fight back. We're going to make you pay for that. Still kind of waiting on that by and large from a grand scale military perspective. Okay, so you damaged a building, you blew up a civilian hotel, it's just, I'm not sure they've been all that effective. But okay, anyways, that said, they go on to say that they of course completely ignore the fact that it's their country who's been blowing up oil tankers this entire week. So they say, oh, don't you dare attack our oil infrastructure, we're going to retaliate. You've already been attacking the oil infrastructure, frankly, of other countries. But then, of course, lastly, you have Iran once again trying to drag other countries into the conflict, which they sort of admitted was a dumb move. But then the IRGC, the hardliners in the government, then got mad at the president. And so we've been covering this whole situation of nobody knows who's in charge. Nobody knows if the supreme leader is even alive. So you're going to hear a lot of different messages, to which I say that's maybe a reason also we should take an individual leader's message with a grain of salt here. But anyways, all of that said, right? Typical bluster. But then I want you to now take a listen to what seems sort of an about face here, where the Iranian foreign minister then proceeds to explain that the Strait of Hormuz is actually open, and basically Iran doesn't actually want problems with anyone there besides America and Israel. Take a listen. And this is very important because, I'm not sure if I trust them at all whatsoever, but if what they're saying here is true, then essentially the entire global oil crisis would be averted for reasons I'll explain. Although, again, we can't really believe what the Iranian government says, but we'll at the very least break down the reasons why they might be saying it. So all that said, take a listen.
Is there any sign that Iran is prepared to allow passage of the Strait of Hormuz? Will the Strait of Hormuz remain closed so long as this war continues?
Well, as a matter of fact, the Strait of Hormuz is open. It is only closed to the tankers and ships belong to our enemies, to those who are attacking us and their allies. Others are free to pass. Of course, many of them prefer not, because of their security concerns. This has nothing to do with us. And at the same time, there are many tankers and ships who are passing through the Strait of Hormuz, and I can say that the strait is not closed, but it is only closed to American, Israeli, ships and tankers, and not to others.
So that's actually really interesting rhetoric now coming out of Iran. I doubt how much it's really true and if it's going to be backed up by actions. I mean, it has not thus far. But at least on the surface, what the Iranian foreign minister is now trying to say, according to him, this is his words, right? That other countries besides America and Israel are now free to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. They can have safe passage. Iran doesn't want to fight the war with them. And really, this is just American and Israeli tankers that they're going to be harassing. Now, I repeat, that's directly contradicted by their own actions this week. They blew up an Iraqi tanker. What did Iraq have to do with this? They even blew up a tanker belonging to Thailand. What on earth does Thailand have anything to do with a conflict in the Persian Gulf? But, it's just been the simple reality. They're just harassing anyone and everyone that maybe they're not even able to identify or whatever, right? And as usual, as I said before, Iran does these really stupid tricks where, despite claiming to be this just victim who's acting in self-defense, they just always figure out how to antagonize essentially everyone in the region and even outside of the region. And then, when the whole world is now descending on them, they're like, oh no, we didn't mean it. We're so sorry, right? Just typical, victimhood behavior and all that. But okay, let's break down. Okay, so that again, I don't know how much I trust that, but if that is true, then what Iran is basically doing right now is standing down and averting a potential global oil crisis. What do I mean by that? Well, it's worth noting that, okay, so say, for example, that Iran only cuts off American oil from the Persian Gulf, then that's not something that heavily affects us. I think it's actually a common misconception that America gets a lot of its oil from the Middle East. No, it's only about 4 to 5% that's coming from the Persian Gulf. So if that's the case, we get a very tiny amount of our oil from that part of the world, and that number has been decreasing a lot since the Persian Gulf War, but especially under Trump and under the policy of drill baby drill. He's been very heavy on American energy independence. Then why is it that our gas prices in America spike because of a global oil crisis? Well, that is simply due to global supply and demand factors that affect the price. That's what's important to point out. It's not because America doesn't have oil if we cut off the Middle East. So this is to say that if Iran basically said no Middle East oil for America, but okay for the rest of the world, then that would actually stabilize the global oil market And as a result, and again, because of the fact we don't actually need a lot of oil from the Middle East, we just need it to be stable in the global market, then in the end, we would essentially be fine there, right? Now, I repeat, I doubt that that's actually going to be the Iranian policy to a degree. But then at the same time, as I brought up yesterday, what could be the potential reason why Iran is now trying to pivot, trying to stand down on this whole Strait of Hormuz conflict? It's because, number one, Trump sent the warning shot. He made it very clear. Look, you want to mess with our oil? We can mess with yours too, and we can do it a lot worse than you. So be careful when you play with fire. And that's what the Karg Island attack did. That's the message that it sent. And I repeat, if Iran thinks that they're just going to only allow their own oil tankers to leave the Strait of Hormuz and go to China and shut down and harass everyone else, I think you seem to forget we have a navy. We have the world's most powerful navy. You don't have a navy at all because we blew it up. So, you know, it's very dumb to think that, oh, America's navy can't stop an oil tanker. Okay, we can do the exact same thing you're doing, you know, on one hand. But then even secondly, I think really the diplomatic pressure here, I would argue behind the scenes, is, I will repeat, coming from China. Because it's the reality that China gets a lot of oil from Iran. That oil passes through what? The same exact Strait of Hormuz that Iran is currently messing with. And so yes, China's likely looking at this picture and saying, okay, you know, maybe we marginally sort of verbally back Iran in this conflict, but as we broke down, who knows how true that really is. But they're watching their bottom line right now and saying, hey, Iran, you are risking our own oil supply, because when you do this, when you harass the tankers, when you cause problems in the Persian Gulf, and if that invites a form of mutually assured destruction, then you're cutting off our own oil with your own stupidity. So stop this right now, stand down right now, pursue diplomacy, because this is a bad idea. So that's sort of the other angle of this that we talked about yesterday, and a reason why I say, you know, that could be partially sort of driving here the Iranian decision. Again, I don't know. I don't know if this is even necessarily a person that we should be taking all that seriously, but I'm just going to point out, if you do suddenly start to see a shift in Iran's approach towards the Strait of Hormuz and what they're doing right now with the tankers, and if they choose to stand down, then understand these were the reasons why, right? It's because Trump, number one, did this show of force, and as usual has to kind of like slap the Iranians down like whack-a-mole, like, oh, we're going to do this new Evel Knievel plot to take down America. Oh, got to blow that up too. But then secondly, don't forget, Beijing is watching right now, and Iran's stupid, counterproductive, ultimately self-destructive ideas that they've tried to pursue throughout this war are doing no favors to Beijing. Iran is rapidly isolating themselves even more, and, you know, just another factor here to consider. Now, perhaps I would say likewise, on the other hand, even if this Iranian foreign minister wants to say one thing, we repeat, it's our opinion right now the supreme leader, supposed supreme leader of Iran, might actually be dead. It appears that the Revolutionary Guard is running most of the government, but then there's sort of another faction, and then you have this guy here, who knows who he's even speaking for. So I would argue that's probably also to blame for a lot of the inconsistency. There's no leadership, and so one official might say we're not doing it, and then another official says don't listen to him, go and bomb the ships anyway. So, you know, these are issues that we still have to contend with. But again, just some pretty interesting rhetoric that I wanted to point out here. We'll keep an eye on what happens next in the Strait of Hormuz. Either way, I think America is going to have to get an alliance together and secure it from these absolute idiots. But, you know, in the end, I think that won't be all that hard to do. I don't think it'll be any harder than, say, you know, launching or bombing directly their country. So hopefully they get the point. But anyways, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.